I never thought I'd be the guy to suspect his wife. I wasn't the paranoid type, never the one to snoop through her phone or wonder where she was when she said she was out with friends. Trust was the foundation of our marriage, or at least, that's what I believed. But trust is a funny thing. It blinds you, makes you ignore the small things, convinces you that love is enough to keep someone loyal. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed sooner. Maybe I should have seen the signs. It started small, the way these things always do. Tiny shifts in routine, barely noticeable unless you were paying attention. And I wasn't, not at first. I was busy with work, with life, with all the things that made up a normal, comfortable marriage. My wife, Lauren, was a creature of habit. She worked as a corporate event planner, a job that kept her busy but never too busy for me. At least, that's what I used to think. Then the changes came. Subtle at first, like the way she started staying later at work. The first time she texted that she had to work late, I didn't think much of it. Deadlines, last-minute client changes, these things happened. But then it became a pattern. A few nights a week turned into almost every night. She stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. She started guarding her phone, keeping it face down on the counter when she used to leave it lying around. When I walked into the room, she would click out of whatever she was looking at, her expression too neutral, too careful. I ignored it. I told myself it was nothing. That's what trust does to you. It makes you blind. And then there was my car. Lauren had always preferred my car over hers. She claimed it was smoother, easier to drive. She borrowed it from time to time, mostly when she had errands or was meeting her sister. But lately, the mileage had been off. I wasn't the type to track things like that, but it was hard not to notice when a full tank barely lasted a few days. I brought it up once, casually, while we were having dinner. She barely looked up from her plate. Errands, she said with a shrug. Driving to see my mom. It was a reasonable explanation. Logical. But something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. Like she had already anticipated the question. The next morning, I got into my car and immediately noticed something was off. It wasn't just the mileage. There was a scent, faint but unmistakable. Expensive cologne. Masculine. Not mine. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, inhaling deeply, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. Maybe she had given someone a ride. Maybe it was nothing. But doubt had already planted itself in my mind. I opened the glove compartment. Nothing unusual. Checked under the seats. Nothing. Just an empty car with a full history I had no access to. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That Lauren wouldn't do this to me. That even entertaining the thought was an insult to everything we had built together. And yet, the feeling wouldn't go away. The moment that sealed it came 2 days later. I had an early morning meeting, which meant I left the house before Lauren. But as I backed out of the driveway, I noticed something on the ground near where my car had been parked. A small, silver earring. Not Lauren's. I knew because she hated silver. She only wore gold, always had. It was a preference she never wavered on. I stared at that tiny piece of metal lying in the driveway, my pulse hammering in my ears. It was small, insignificant to anyone else. But to me, it was a fracture in the foundation. I didn't say anything that night. I needed to be sure. So I waited. And I started paying attention. Lauren didn't know it yet, but something had shifted. The blind trust one had given her so freely had cracked, and through that crack, doubt was bleeding in. I just needed proof. And I was going to find it. The earring stayed in my pocket for 2 days. I kept running my fingers over it, feeling its small, cold edges like it held all the answers I needed. Maybe it did. Maybe it was nothing. But in my gut, I knew better. I started watching Lauren more closely, not in an obvious way, just enough to notice the things I'd ignored before. The way she'd glance at her phone with the smallest flicker of hesitation before answering a text. The way she'd excuse herself to take calls in another room. The way she'd laugh a little too hard at things that weren't funny when she thought I wasn't looking. And then there was the car. She borrowed it again that night. Said she was going out with her friend, Jessica. Nothing unusual. She and Jessica had been close since college. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. Where are you guys going? I asked casually, taking a sip of my drink. Just dinner, she replied too quickly, reaching for her purse. Probably that sushi place we like. I nodded, pretending to accept it. But the second the door closed behind her, I checked my phone and sent Jessica a message. Hey, just checking. Lauren said you two were grabbing dinner tonight? I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, 3 dots appeared. Then her response. What? No, I haven't talked to her all week. I stared at the screen, the words confirming what I already knew but didn't want to believe. Lauren had lied to me. It hit harder than I expected. Not just the lie itself, but the ease with which she said it. The way she had looked me in the eye and fed me a story like it was the most natural thing in the world. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. This wasn't the time to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. By the time she got home, I had already settled onto the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. She walked in, casual, relaxed, tossing her purse onto the counter. "Hey," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Dinner was great. Jess says hi, by the way." I looked up at her, keeping my expression neutral. "Oh yeah," I said. "What did you guys end up getting?" She didn't miss a beat. "Sushi, like I said." I nodded, fighting the urge to react. I had text proof that she never saw Jessica, but she had no idea that I knew. She kissed my cheek, the same way she always did, and walked into the bedroom. I watched her go, my hands tightening into fists. I could have confronted her right then. I could have called her out on the lie, watched her scramble for an excuse, seen how deep she was willing to go to cover her tracks. But I didn't. Instead, I waited. Because I wasn't just looking for the truth anymore. I was looking for the perfect way to destroy her with it. The night after Lauren's fake dinner with Jessica, I barely slept. My mind wouldn't shut off. The weight of her lies sat heavy on my chest, pressing down like a slow, suffocating force. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her slow, even breathing beside me. Peaceful, like nothing was wrong. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to sit back and let her play me for a fool. If she was lying about one thing, she was lying about more. I needed proof. Real proof. When Lauren got up, she moved through the morning like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her coffee, and scrolled through her phone while I pretended to do the same. "Any plans today?" I asked casually. She didn't even look up. "Work's gonna be busy. We have a big event next week, so I'll probably be stuck in meetings all day." "Meetings?" "Right." She left a little earlier than usual, and the moment the door closed, I got up and grabbed my laptop. It took me all of 10 minutes to order a small, discreet GPS tracker. It would arrive by the next day. Until then, I needed another way to keep tabs on her. I went to the garage and got into my car. Her scent still lingered inside. Soft, floral, but with the faintest trace of something else. Something unfamiliar. I inhaled deeply, feeling my stomach turn. Then I checked the dashboard. Lauren never messed with my car settings. She barely adjusted the seat when she drove it. But the Bluetooth, that was a different story. I tapped the screen, scrolling through the recent connections. My phone. Her phone. And then, a third device. One I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. The name was just a series of letters and numbers, generic, but I knew exactly what it meant. Someone else had been in my car. I felt something inside me shift. A slow, simmering rage, controlled but dangerous. I needed to know who. I got out of the car, shutting the door quietly behind me, and walked back inside. I pulled up the dash cam footage on my laptop, fast-forwarding through the last few recordings. Most of them were just Lauren, driving like normal. But then, a clip from 2 nights ago. I hit play. At first, it was nothing. Just Lauren getting into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirror. Then, after a few minutes, another figure appeared in the frame. A man. Tall, dark-haired, confident. He slid into the passenger seat like he belonged there. Then he reached over and placed his hand on her thigh. I froze. Lauren laughed, turning toward him with a look I hadn't seen in years. A look that used to be meant for me. She said something, her lips moving, but there was no audio. But I didn't need sound to understand what was happening. Then, right there, in my car, she kissed him. Not just a quick kiss. Not just a mistake. A deep, slow, intimate kiss. The kind that told me this wasn't the first time. The kind that told me everything I needed to know. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling my entire world shift beneath me. This was it. The truth, laid bare in pixels and light. Lauren wasn't just lying. She was cheating, and she had been doing it right under my nose. I exhaled slowly, forcing my hands to relax. My fingers had curled into fists without me realizing it. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. I didn't feel sadness. Not yet. Just cold, quiet rage. I rewound the footage, watching it again, making sure I wasn't imagining things. But no, it was real. Every second of it. I could confront her. I could storm into her office and throw this in her face. demand an explanation, force her to admit what she had done. But that wasn't enough. She had lied to me, used me, taken my trust, and thrown it away. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of an argument. I was going to make her regret it. And for that, I needed patience. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and saved the footage. This wasn't just proof. This was ammunition. And when the time was right, I was going to use it to destroy her. I spent the rest of the day with my mind running at full speed. The footage played in an endless loop behind my eyes, every detail seared into my brain. Lauren laughing, her fingers brushing against his arm, the way she leaned in, completely comfortable, like this was something they had done 100 times before. I could barely eat. Every time I tried, my stomach twisted. It wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, colder. The realization that the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had loved and trusted, had been betraying me without hesitation. But I kept my composure. I didn't text her, didn't call, didn't let on that anything was wrong. I needed to be careful. That night, when she walked through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to be focused on my laptop. She moved around the house like nothing had changed, humming softly as she kicked off her heels. "Hey, babe," she called, setting her purse down. "How was your day?" I glanced up, forcing a small smile. "Same as always. Yours." She stretched her arms over her head, letting out a tired sigh. "Exhausting. Meetings all day? I swear, my boss is trying to kill me." "Liar." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Sounds rough." She came over, wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind, and pressed a soft kiss to the side of my face. For a split second, I almost pulled away. But I didn't. Instead, I let her touch me, let her pretend, let her act like she hadn't been in my car with another man just days ago. It made my blood boil. "You okay?" she asked, resting her chin on my shoulder. I turned my head slightly, meeting her eyes. "Yeah, just tired." She smiled and kissed me again, then pulled away. "I'm going to take a quick shower. Be right back." I nodded, watching as she disappeared down the hall. The moment I heard the water running, I grabbed my phone and opened my messages. There was only one person I needed to talk to. Jessica. She had already told me that Lauren hadn't seen her the night she claimed to, but now I needed more. "Hey, Jess. I need to ask you something. It's important." The response was almost instant. "Of course. What's up?" I hesitated for a moment, then typed. "Do you know if Lauren has been seeing someone? Someone she hasn't told me about?" There was a long pause. Too long. Then, finally, "Why are you asking me this?" My pulse quickened. "Because I have a feeling she has. And I think you might know something." Another pause. Then, "Eric, I don't want to get involved." That was all I needed to confirm it. "So you do know something. Please don't put me in this position." I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around my phone. "Jessica, I need to know. Who is he?" This time, she took longer to reply. When she finally did, it was only 2 words. "Daniel Carter." I felt my breath leave my body. I knew that name. Daniel Carter was Lauren's boss. I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind reeling. So that was it. The late nights. The meetings. The guarded phone. It all made sense now. My wife was sleeping with her boss. The shower turned off in the bathroom. A few minutes later, Lauren stepped into the hallway, wrapped in a towel, smiling like nothing had changed. I looked at her and felt absolutely nothing. Not sadness. Not pain. Just the steady, burning certainty that she had no idea what was coming. And I was going to make sure she regretted every second of it. I barely slept that night. My mind was a war zone, every thought crashing into the next. I kept picturing Lauren and Daniel together, their secret moments, the way she smiled at him the way she used to smile at me. The betrayal was no longer just an idea. It had a face, a name, and a history. By morning, my plan was fully formed. I moved carefully. I wasn't just going to confront her. That would be too easy, too quick. I wanted her to feel the walls close in around her, just like she had unknowingly done to me. She left for work like she always did, dressed sharp, her hair styled perfectly, her lips pressing against my cheek before she grabbed her purse. "I might be home late again," she said over her shoulder. "Big project deadline coming up." I almost laughed. Instead, I just nodded. "No problem. See you later." I watched from the window as she drove away, my hands tightening into fists at my sides. Then I turned and got to work. The first thing I did was call my bank. I had been the sole provider in our marriage for years, covering most of our expenses while Lauren focused on her career. Our mortgage was in my name. The car she refused to drive? Mine. Every major account, every credit card she used, was under me. By noon, I had moved my savings into a separate account she had no access to. By 1, I had frozen our joint credit cards. By 2, I had an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I sat in his office, the smell of leather and old books surrounding me as he glanced over the dash cam footage I had saved. He didn't look surprised. He had seen this before, too many times to count. Infidelity clause? He asked, glancing at me over his glasses. I nodded. I want everything airtight. No settlement, no spousal support. She walks away with nothing. He leaned back in his chair, nodding. With this footage, we can make that happen. But I'll be honest, if she fights it, this could get messy. I met his gaze without hesitation. I don't care how messy it gets. I just want her to lose. His lips quirked up in a knowing smile. Then we'll make sure she does. By the time I left his office, I felt lighter, sharper. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was taking control. That evening, when Lauren came home, I played my part perfectly. She walked through the door, setting her purse down as she let out an exhausted sigh. God, what a day. I looked up from my laptop. Yeah? How was it? She kicked off her heels, stretching her arms above her head. Just nonstop. Meetings, phone calls, you know how it is. I didn't know. I knew she hadn't been in meetings. I knew exactly where she had been. I nodded, keeping my expression casual. Sounds rough. Want me to order takeout? She smiled, walking over to kiss me. That would be amazing. I kissed her back, letting my fingers rest lightly against the back of her neck. She had no idea. Not yet. But soon. Very soon. The next morning, I woke up early. The air in the house felt different, like the calm before a storm. Lauren was still asleep beside me, her breathing steady, peaceful. She had no idea that today would be the beginning of the end. I got up, showered, and made coffee like usual. Everything had to seem normal. If I played this right, she wouldn't suspect a thing until it was too late. When she finally stirred, stretching under the covers, she gave me a sleepy smile. Morning. Morning, I said, handing her a mug of coffee. She took a sip, her eyes still half closed. I have another long day ahead. More meetings, more stress. You know how it is. I nodded, watching her carefully. Yeah, I get it. Lies. Every word that came out of her mouth was a lie. But I played along. She got dressed, moving through her morning routine like nothing had changed. She kissed me goodbye, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door, completely unaware that by the time she came home, her world would be falling apart. As soon as she left, I went to work. Step 1, financial ruin. I called my lawyer and confirmed that all of our joint accounts had been locked. Lauren wouldn't be able to use a single credit card tied to me. Her gym membership? Canceled. Streaming services? Canceled. The lease on her luxury car that she barely drove because she preferred mine? Also canceled. By noon, her financial safety net was gone. Step 2, public humiliation. Lauren thought she was untouchable, that she could live this double life without consequences. That was about to change. I sent an email to Daniel's wife. Subject, your husband and my wife. Hi, Emma. I know this is going to be painful to read, but you deserve the truth. Your husband has been having an affair with my wife, Lauren. I have proof. Attached, you'll find dashcam footage from my car. I'm sorry you have to see this, but you deserve to know. I hesitated for only a second before hitting send. It didn't take long for her to respond. The phone rang less than 10 minutes later. I answered. Emma. There was silence on the other end, followed by a shaky breath. How long? Months, I said. Maybe longer. Another silence, this one heavier. Then, steel in her voice. I want to destroy them. I smirked. Then we're on the same page. Step 3, the final confrontation. I spent the rest of the afternoon waiting, knowing that the moment Lauren walked through that door, everything would change. At exactly 6:45 p.m., I heard the sound of her keys in the lock. She walked in, looking exhausted, dropping her bag onto the counter like she always did. God, what a day. I stood up slowly, watching her. She must have felt something was off because she looked at me, frowning slightly. You okay? I tilted my head. You tell me. Her frown deepened. What do you mean? I took my phone from my pocket, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. The dash cam footage played in silence. Lauren's face drained of color. I saw the exact moment she realized she had lost. Her mouth opened, then closed. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. Don't, I said sharply. Don't insult me by lying. Not anymore. She blinked rapidly, her breathing uneven. Eric, I can explain. I laughed. A cold, humorless sound. Explain what? That you've been screwing your boss in my car? That you've been lying to my face for months? Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't. Wasn't what? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Wasn't serious? Wasn't planned? Wasn't a betrayal? She shook her head quickly, as if trying to deny reality. I didn't mean to. But you did, I interrupted. You made a choice, Lauren. Over and over again. Her breathing hitched. I love you. I laughed again. No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. She stared at me, desperate now. Please. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, we can't. I pulled a thick envelope from my jacket and tossed it onto the counter. Divorce papers. Already signed. She gasped, looking down at them like they were a death sentence. Eric, please. Save it, I said, stepping back. You didn't just cheat, Lauren. You destroyed everything we had. And now, you get to live with the consequences. She reached for me, but I stepped out of her grasp. For the first time since this all started, I felt something close to peace. This was over, and she had lost. Lauren stood frozen, her fingers barely touching the envelope on the counter. Her breath was unsteady, her body trembling as she stared down at the divorce papers like they might burn her hands. You already signed them? She whispered, voice cracking. Yeah, I said, my tone steady. This isn't a negotiation, Lauren. It's done. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, not even satisfaction. Just the cold, undeniable truth. She had done this to herself. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, to fight for something, but even she knew it was pointless. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. We can talk about this. We can. No, I cut her off. You don't get to rewrite this story. You don't get to decide how this ends. You made your choices, Lauren. Now, you live with them. Her breathing turned shaky, her hands tightening into fists. You don't understand, Eric. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I laughed, shaking my head. Wasn't supposed to happen? You mean you weren't supposed to get caught? Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I turned away from her, grabbing my keys from the counter. I was done. There was nothing left to say. But before I could walk out, she spoke again. Where are you going? Her voice wavered between panic and disbelief. I paused at the door, looking back at her one last time. Anywhere but here. And then I walked out. The night air was cold against my skin, but I barely felt it. I stepped into my car, gripping the wheel, letting out a slow breath as the weight of everything settled over me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Emma. I answered. Did you do it? She asked, her voice calm, calculated. It's done, I said. She knows. She has the papers. There was a pause, then a soft exhale. Good. Did you talk to Daniel? I asked. A bitter laugh came through the line. Oh, I did more than talk. His job? Gone. His reputation? In flames. His parents? They know everything now. And the best part? He's sleeping in a cheap motel because I kicked him out. I smirked, shaking my head. Guess he didn't see that coming. He thought I'd forgive him, she said, amusement laced with fury. Thought I'd cry and beg him to stay. But guess what? I don't beg. I don't cry. I leaned back in my seat, gripping the phone tighter. Neither do I. Silence stretched between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. Two strangers bound by betrayal, standing in the ruins of the lives our spouses had destroyed. What happens now? She asked. I thought about it. About the house I no longer wanted, the memories that felt like ghosts, the future that had been ripped apart and rewritten. I start over, I said simply. And I make sure she regrets this for the rest of her miserable life. Emma hummed in agreement. Sounds like a plan. I glanced back at the house one last time. The lights were still on, and I imagined Lauren standing there, alone, realizing that she had lost everything. She had expected to get away with it. She had expected me to be weak. But she had underestimated me. And now, she would spend the rest of her life regretting it. I put the car in drive, pulled out of the driveway, and never looked back.